Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Today it's a little cool and cloudy, a little bit rainy, but we're making the best of it, and we need the rain, so we can't complain too much. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're taking care of yourself, being happy, and hopefully learning some things. So today in Critter Chat, we're going to talk about a very unique and amazing species, the African painted dog. Now their scientific name, which is the name that they're known in across the world, in any language, their scientific name is written in Latin. They are called Lycaon pictus, and that literally translates to painted wolf. Now today we call them African painted dogs, but in different places they've called them Cape hunting dogs or African wild dogs. All names are correct, but they live over a wide range of different countries in Africa, and they are an amazing species. To start off with, I'll describe them a little bit in case you haven't seen one. I have put up a photo on the Instagram and on Facebook so that you can see what they look like. They weigh about 80 pounds as an adult. Some would be a bit smaller, of course, maybe in the 50 to 60 pound range. They're between 30 and 44 inches in length. That makes them roughly the size of a Labrador Retriever or a German Shepherd, although a bit lighter weight than some of those individuals could be. Each animal has a unique coat pattern, so they're going to have different colors across their body, and you can actually tell individuals based on the way they look pretty easily. They kind of have a combination of different patchwork of colors, black, brown, white, yellow, and a little bit of red, mixed together to form a very unique coat pattern on each individual. They have really long legs, which is exceptionally important, as they are avid hunters and can wander up to 30 miles a day in search of their food. They also have really big round ears. They almost look like they're wearing a Mickey Mouse hat when they're laying in the grass, and those big ears are very important to them for listening to possible prey, listening to each other, and listening to other large predators. At 80 pounds, they definitely could be driven off of a kill or chased away or injured or even killed by bigger predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas. Typically, the African painted dogs stick together in a big group, and that usually is very successful and helpful to them. They used to range across most of Africa south of the Sahara Desert, with the exception of the rainforest. They don't really like rainy forested areas. But they live in some of the drier forest, some of the mountainous regions, some of the desert regions, and definitely across a lot of the plains or savannas in Africa. Their largest populations today are kind of in those countries towards the bottom part of Africa, but not quite at the bottom. Their largest populations are in Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, Tanzania, and Mozambique. So that's the stretch of countries just above the country of South Africa and below, say, like Kenya or the Congo region where the rainforests are. They do show up in some of those other countries as well, like South Africa and Kenya, but they are typically not very common in those areas. They are definitely an endangered species with estimates between 5,000 and 7,000 individuals left. That's pretty low for a big predator who has a fairly large range. That's pretty scary that there's only that many of them left. Excuse me. They live in large social packs. That's usually dominated by a dominant pair, an alpha pair, a male and a female. Those are the two that would have the babies, the pups. They would have pups anywhere from 2 to 20 pups at a time, all from the same parents, but all members of the pack help to take care of the pups. They will all help teach the pups things, and they will all help feed the pups. Particularly when the pups are really young, the mom will stay in the den which is an underground burrow. Usually they take over the burrows of other animals, things like aardvarks that are really good diggers, or maybe warthogs. But they can dig on their own as well. If there's not a good burrow around, they'll make one. But the mom will live in the den with the babies for the first about 2 months, and during that time, the other pack members will go hunting every day, and they will bring food back for the mom and for the other babies. And the way they do that, they eat it, they swallow it. They'll swallow a whole bunch of food at one time, and then when they come back, they'll regurgitate that food for the others to eat, which would be a little gross for you and I, but that's a common way a lot of animals do eat. They are extraordinarily successful hunters. They've done some research estimating how different animals in Africa rate as far as their hunting strategies. Things like a leopard would have maybe about a 20 or 30% success rate in going hunting. They are very stealthy. Things like a cheetah would actually have a little less, maybe about 20%. They're very fast. Things like lions would have maybe around a 40% success rate. But the African painted dogs, they are highly successful. Like 80% of the time they go hunting, they catch what they are going after, which is extraordinary. But the way that that's possible is their group mentality. So they live in these large packs, anywhere from 6 to up to 20, or sometimes even, if there's a lot of puppies, up to 35 individuals. And they will communicate through a variety of different ways with their packs. Those would include body language, the way that they interact and touch each other, and also their vocalizations. Now they have a bunch of different sounds, and they don't sound hardly anything like other dogs. They don't really howl like a wolf, and they don't really bark like a dog, although they do sometimes sound kind of like that. But most of their noises sound more like birds. They make a lot of like chirping sounds, or kind of a giggling sound. I'll try to find a video and put it up later on the Facebook profile, but it's really interesting, the communication that they have. Through that communication, they're able to really coordinate with each other during their hunts, and that's how they're so successful. There's some really great documented cases of this, where certain pack members will split off and go different ways around a herd of animals that they're trying to chase. And even one case that I've watched where 3 or 4 animals came from behind and started chasing the herd, but others were lined up further down and further beyond that, so that I believe they were chasing wildebeest that day. They would chase them, and they would have to kind of run in between where all the other dogs were already waiting. And that means that when the dogs who started chasing got tired, new dogs were kind of sitting there waiting to jump in and continue the chase. They also are good endurance runners. So animals like a cheetah can go very fast, like 72 miles an hour is the world record for a cheetah. But they can only do that for about 100 yards. So that's about the length of a football field. And wild dogs, they can run for miles at a time, usually going about 30 miles an hour. They can burst speeds up to around 40, but for a sustained run, they need to slow it down to like 25 to 30 miles an hour. But that's good enough speed and far enough distance that they can pretty much outrun most of their prey species, meaning their prey would eventually get tired and they'd be able to successfully hunt or kill that animal to provide food for the rest of their pack. Now, with this successful hunting, you would think, oh, why are they endangered? Why aren't there more of them? How are they not doing better out there in the wild? Well, the problem, once again, is people, humans. We are the big problem, and we're the big problem in a couple of different ways. One of those is that people are sometimes really afraid that the dogs will come after their livestock, although there's very few cases where that has happened. But people who raise cows, goats, or sheep, if they see an African painted dog, they will often try to shoot it. Also, people who are setting snares or traps for other types of animals often catch wild dogs. Wild dogs run through the forest chasing different things, and they often get caught in those wire snares or traps very easily, and that unfortunately has caused a big problem for their population. Also, a big problem for them are diseases that can be carried by domestic dogs. Things that, like, we get vaccinations for our dogs at home can be a big part of a problem in Africa for the painted dogs. Those are things like canine distemper and rabies have both become huge problems and killed off big portions of their population. And the last big problem that humans have caused is called habitat fragmentation. And what that means is if the dogs are living in this kind of forest over here, and there's other dogs living in this savanna plains area over here, and people decide to put a bunch of farms and roads in between, then when the pups from this group and the pups from this group grow up and try to go start a new group, they can't get to each other. And that's a big problem with a lot of animals in Africa and a lot of developing areas of the world, where people are starting to move further and further away from cities to grow crops or to build dams, build roads. All of those things can have a big impact on the wild space around them. Now, there are some people who are doing some really good work with the African painted dogs, and that's our special shout out today. Goes out to the Painted Dog Conservation Group. Their website is painteddog.org. All right, sorry about that. We're back. Had some connection issues. But painteddog.org is the website for the Painted Dog Conservation Group. They are focused on painted dogs. I believe it's in Zimbabwe, and they do a lot of really amazing work with the local community and with the painted dogs in their area. Now, painted dogs can benefit from protected wildlife corridors, so places that are set aside like a protected forest or a national park, and painted dogs really benefit from that. And there's also a lot of groups out there who are working to reduce conflict between humans and the painted dogs, and that is a huge help, as a lot of people kind of view these not as the regal predators like a lion might be, but more as a pest. And their myth of being kind of a terrible animal has really caused them a lot of the same problems, similar to how wolves were treated here in the United States in the early 1900s. Now, my own experience with painted dogs began when I was a zoo educator at the Phoenix Zoo in Arizona. And as an educator there, I got to talk about the dogs most days that I worked, and on occasion I would get to help throw some treats or snacks to the dogs, and I really became very interested in how they communicated and how they worked together. Their body language and their vocalizations were fascinating to me. Also, they were really clever about where they would lay and how they would sit, depending on the temperature, to help keep them a little cooler, or if they were hot, they would jump in water or go into shade. But they were very resourceful animals, and I had a lot of admiration for them. When I went to Kenya in 2010, it was kind of my secret goal to hope to see painted dogs, although I knew my chances were very low. Most people who had gone to the places where I was going had never seen wild dogs in that area, or painted dogs. But while we were there, our big group had split into two smaller groups, and we had took different places for a couple of days, and then we were switching. And on the day we were switching, the other group, when they woke up, they found there was a water hole nearby, and during the night, the painted dogs had killed a waterbuck antelope and were at the water hole and eating it. And so the other half of the group that was there got to watch them for a couple of hours. And then when they had kind of eaten their fill, they moved off into the bush, and they sent a guide to follow them so that they could keep a good eye on them. And then we were switching places that day, so our truck was driving towards that spot, and it took us quite a while to get there. And by the time we got there, the truck I was in was the last truck to get there, and we drove up. We saw them very briefly, and then they got scared because the truck was too loud, and they ran off into the trees. And I was pretty disappointed. I thought, oh, that's a fleeting glimpse. I should be happy. But I was kind of sad because everyone else in the group got to see them better than the people in our truck. And as we were driving back to the camp where we were going to stay, we were in the area where they had been running. And I knew from my time at working at the Phoenix Zoo as an educator, I knew how to spot them amongst the tall grass or in the bushes by looking for those big ears. They look like Mickey Mouse ears on the top of their head. And I knew if I watched for those ears, I'd be able to find them. As I had done many days at the zoo, finding them in their exhibit. I also knew that it was late morning, that they had had a big meal during the early morning hours, so they would be tired, they would be looking for a shady spot. So I spent some time as we drove looking in the shady areas, and there was a spot where we were crossing a dry riverbed, and along that riverbed is where they had last been seen. And as I looked up the riverbed, I could see them laying under a tree. So I shouted to our guide, I said, "There they are." And he was very excited that we had found them again because he also wanted to be able to watch them a little more. And so we turned the truck around and we drove back up, and it was a pack of 18 animals. We were able to see 12 of them laying there amongst the trees. And that's the photo that I shared earlier today, is that pack of wild dogs. So I was fascinated to be able to get to watch them. We stayed with them for about 15-20 minutes and just watched them kind of lounge around in the shade as they had very full bellies and were very happy. Now later on in my career, when I moved to Los Angeles, one of the animals I was trained to work with when I was a zookeeper at the LA Zoo were in fact the African painted dogs. So I got to work with them and I worked with 3 dogs there in LA, and they were very amazing animals to work with. I really loved to kind of give them some unique places of where they could find some of their food. So I would take their ground up meat and make little meatballs out of it and hide it throughout their exhibit, and then watch them try to find it. And I have a video of them doing that at the Los Angeles Zoo that I'll post up on the Facebook profile later today. Well, I hope you've learned some interesting things today in me talking about the African painted dogs on this Critter Chat. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're having fun. Stay safe, and until tomorrow, we will see you then. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and share this content with family, friends, and whoever may be interested. All right, see you later. Thanks. Bye.